Hey you, yes you, thanks for tuning in to the Healthy, Wild, and Free podcast. My name is David Benjamin. I'm your host and the founder of HealthyWildAndFree.com. If you're like me, you understand that health, the mind, body, spirit, heart connection, and living a green, eco-friendly, sustainable lifestyle are some of the most valuable and life-enhancing lessons that we can learn and pass on to our children to live happy and abundant lives. That's why this podcast was created, to help you grow in these areas. If you aren't already subscribed to the newsletter, go to HealthyWildAndFree.com, click the box at the top right-hand corner to get a free copy of our latest ebook, and you'll be subscribed to be notified about future podcasts. Thanks for subscribing and tuning in. Enjoy. Hello, podcast listeners. This is David Benjamin, your host of the Healthy, Wild, and Free podcast. I'm really excited today to bring this podcast to you because it's around a topic that I'm really curious about, really interested in, and it's just really interesting information. So today we have David Kane on the show. I met David probably about a month or so ago at the Awaken Empowered Expo in Detroit, Michigan. And when I met him at the event, he was talking about Ormus gold and the enormous kind of health value of it, and just how unique and distinct and different it is, and really the value behind it. So David Kane and his wife Riki are co-owners of Humanigold, conducting groundbreaking research focused on ormic materials. David has an extensive background in diagnosing and troubleshooting technical and mechanical problems, especially in the aircraft and automotive industries. His technical background, combined with a curious and skeptical mindset, led him to his interest in Ormus gold, its health protocols, and effect on our bodies. He was able to use Ormus to completely relieve chronic back pain he had suffered with for many years. I definitely got to remember to ask him about that. His research shows that ormic state materials comprise 5% of the dry weight of the human brain and nervous system, and most likely the rest of us as well. Ormic materials can be regarded as a fifth state of matter, with solids, liquids, gases, and plasma comprising the other four states. There have now been 42 elemental ormic materials isolated, and David and his wife believe they will likely run most of the spectrum of this periodic table. I'm going to bring him on the call right now. And David, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing tonight?
Oh, pretty good.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time and being willing to share this information with us.
My pleasure.
To start the interview, one kind of question I always ask the guests I have on my podcast is, how did you kind of initially get interested in Ormus gold and its application for health and wellness and what it can do for our mind, bodies, and spirits?
Well, our original introduction to this was an article on white powder gold in Nexus magazine about 10 years ago. And it's an Australian kind of on the edge magazine, and read the article. It was a very interesting article, very well done. It raised probably more questions than answers, and it just got me thinking about this, and it was one of those curious things that, I don't know if it's happened to you, but you end up thinking about this for the next 2 or 3 months, and it's like, why does this keep coming back up, So then we started to, dig into it a little bit and come up with David Hudson's lectures from back in the 90s and Barry Carter and various other people that had worked with this material. And, we ended up signing up and going to a talk, first of all, and then going to a course to learn more about it. And that kind of just set us off because both Riki and myself had read the same articles, unbeknownst to each other. We didn't know each other originally back then. So off we went from there, and now it's been about 7 years that we've been working with this stuff.
Very cool. And I'm sure you've learned a lot in 7 years about Ormus gold, right?
Well, yeah, and it's about so many other things because it crosses into so many different avenues of our existence, of our day-to-day life, and of how we do things, and it's led to some very interesting understandings about our physiology, which has never been talked about, never heard about it in the conventional medical practice or anything, So you get bits and pieces of it, but without that focal point, they don't make sense. I mean, little things like your vitamins and your minerals, and they tell us, well, we need iron, we need magnesium, we need all these things, and then they'll give you, over-the-counter additives with the metals in them, and what we actually need is the ormic form of the metals. It's the white powder form of the metals, the biological thing, the different state of matter other than the metal. But, they can be used for a source or plant materials and so on. But that's what we require. And our digestive system actually has the mechanism to create these. It changes it from a metal to an ormic material in our own physiology. So, that's one of the things that we found out since we've been, working with these materials. So
for someone who's not really familiar with Ormus gold and hasn't heard about it before, how would you kind of describe Ormus gold to someone who's not familiar with it?
Well, Ormus gold, for example, it's the fifth state of matter of gold. You can actually take pure gold and you can do a chemical process on it. This is what Hudson patented. And you can produce a white powder from the metallic gold with no other substances involved, and then you can use it as an ingestible, but the material itself made from gold is actually an anti-magnetic powder, and gold has no magnetic properties in its metallic state. So it's the biological state of gold, or the biological state of copper or rhodium or whatever. There's this other state of matter that nobody seems to investigate,
So basically, for example, kind of like water, for example, you have a block of ice, and you have to wait for that ice to melt to drink the water. It's similar with gold. You have a bar of gold, if you will, but then the ormic state is what allows you to actually ingest that gold and to receive health benefits from it.
Yeah. See, what we think is like there's 6 inert gases, which are xenon, krypton, neon, radon. These gases all have full electron valence bonding rings. They have no extras. They have no shortage. So these materials don't chemically bond with other substances. And what we think is going on here is when you achieve the ormic state of gold, you have reached the neutral state of gold, wherein it has altered its bonding rings to the point that it is chemically neutral. It will not bond with other materials in the white powder state. But that said, it is necessary for us because it's part of our physical construction. And when we have these materials in their proper amounts, they seem to work in the internal communication systems of our bodies. It's something like the telephone poles supporting the communication line. They're not actually part of the communication, but they need to be there. So in that sort of a construct, that's how this stuff works. So it doesn't get consumed like other chemicals, because these chemicals they're not interactive, but they are part of the communication system.
For me, I've known about Ormus gold for only a few years now, but I'm sure a lot of people in the audience, this is completely new to them, or they don't really know the history of Ormus gold. So my question would be: is there any history to Ormus gold, and was there a culture that actually used this within their kind of day-to-day lives?
Well, it's looking like there's a very ancient history to Ormus gold. If people are listening and then they need some notes, there's a video by a gentleman named Lawrence Gardner, and he investigated some of the archaeological past and so on, and his video is called Lost Secrets of the Sacred Ark. And it's an hour long, quite interesting, and he explores Ormus, or what they called white powder gold in the time of the Egyptians, and it actually shows up in quite a number of the Egyptian frescoes. More recently, in our Bible, whenever they gave Jesus frankincense, myrrh, and gold. We believe that they gave him white powder gold. We don't think they gave a nice little kid a gold brick, you know. It doesn't make much sense. Subsequent to that was when Moses went up the mount to collect the tablets. It says that the Israelites collected all their gold together. They fashioned a golden calf and they were worshiping it. When Moses came down the mount, it says exactly in Exodus 32 verse 20, it says Moses smashed the calf. He burnt the calf to a powder. He threw the powder in the water and made the Israelites drink it. So Moses Moses was raised by the Egyptian royal family, and the royal families of Egypt and their priests were taught these alchemical lessons when they were growing up. So they were all well versed in this. Moses seemed to be at loggerheads because he was, divulging sacred information to people other than the Egyptians. So, but I mean, it's there. It's in black and white. And if you take it literally as it's written, it makes sense. I think Catholic Concordance calls it a punishment, but then there's no explanations of who was punished and how it worked or any, so it's just a conclusion someone drew that doesn't make literal sense,
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other references too here and there in a lot of the ancient texts.
That's really interesting. I know, I believe with Egypt, there's that's kind of where alchemy was kind of started to some degree, correct?
Well, yeah. I think today the word alchemy is sort of largely misunderstood because the 7 principles of alchemy were, it was just a way of looking at the world. It was an explanation of everything. Just like the Bible is an explanation of everything, or numerology is an explanation of everything but through a different perspective. So that's essentially what alchemy was. How it got convoluted to today, where they're saying, it's supposed to be able to turn, lead into gold or something like that. I think it got off base because I think originally people understood that the gold of life was the Ormus gold, the white powder gold. And when you take some of this product and give the tiniest little bit of it to your plants, you see just incredible responses, and pets the same thing, just amazing responses. And pets and plants basically circumvent the whole placebo effect. So it's interesting to see and to watch. So.
Have you seen? Have there been any scientific studies done on kind of the effects of Ormus gold on the human body?
Very, very little. Again, because it's got this social shun where they either call it, alchemy, which technically doesn't exist to conventional science, or, people that have found significant results along, these lines of investigation invariably are kind of shunned to the to the extreme outside of the conventional teaching protocols. And when you're in the extreme outside and you do your work and you believe in what you're doing, you can't get your funding, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like Robert Becker that wrote the book The Body Electric. He was studying cellular regeneration and so on. He started in 1939, spent most of his career doing this, but he was on the outside edge of things, and he always had trouble getting funding, places to work, things like that. So unless you follow the status quo, it's very difficult to get support for anything that isn't mainstream.
Mm-hmm. So they really haven't researched it then. Traditional science kind of hasn't.
Not a lot. There's been some marginal things. When David Hudson was working with this stuff in the 90s and that, I believe there was some studies done in Holland with 250,000 chickens, and they had extremely tiny amounts added to the food supply of the chickens, and they found some interesting things. They found their weights increased. They found that there was an 85% reduction in, one of the afflictions that chickens get. I mean, I'm not well versed on chickens, but so there was a study done on that. There's been some arbitrary studies done on adding Ormus to plants, or one of the processes for releasing ormic materials is to magnetically treat waters. And certain types of waters have high amounts of Ormus in it. Once they're magnetically treated and applied to crops, you see increased yields in crops with decreased use of water and improved health and improved size,